this week's show, Ginny Buckley reports on Honda's birthday present to itself, the Honda S2000. And Elisa Portelli drives the Seat Toledo. But first, Richard Hammond gets to grips with the TVR Tuscan.
Sports cars, they're great, aren't they? We love them. And the best thing is they're all different. Take your Lotus Elise, for instance. Now there's a sports car you just hop in and straight away drive as hard as you like, from novice to expert in the time it takes you to stub out your fag and start the engine. Then there are different cars from people like TVR, cars like this, the new Tuscan. Not a car that I feel inclined to leap in and thrash immediately. You've got to work up to these things before you become intimate. This, in fact, that's taking place now before you is the automotive equivalent of foreplay. We're gazing longingly into one another's eyes before we get down to it. Right, come on you. Wow, what mama! Nice interior. Always been a fan of turquoise.
The first time you take a good long look at the Tuscan, it can be a rather unnerving experience, because it's rather difficult to make out just what shape it actually is. All you're left with is a big bag of assorted curves, glints and highlights. Closest thing I can think of, and you're going to think I'm mad for this, was the first time as a youngster I saw an early Lamborghini Countach. Yes, I know it's all straight lines, whereas the TVR is all curves, but it was the same effect. It was a black one parked between two cars, and I couldn't for the life of me describe exactly what the shape was. I just knew there were lots of pointy bits and lots of angles and lots of highlights, and it's a similar effect with the TVR, only curvier.
The Tuscan is a long and eagerly awaited arrival, and after much speculation as to what it would be powered by, what it would be based on and what it would look like, this is the result. And it looks incredible, very much like a show car straight onto the road. It's finally powered by TVR's brand new, all their own work, thank you, Governor straight six engine, which is, to my mind, glorious. You'll find it already in the Cerberus, it's exactly the same lump. And in fact, the Tuscan is based loosely on the Cerberus, though I say loosely, and it is. They started with that platform and then kind of took it elsewhere. It's a shorter wheelbase because it's only a two-seater rather than four. TVR tend to work like that. They'll start with one particular point rather than necessarily from scratch and then take it on somewhere else entirely. It's balanced and poised, and the ride is surprisingly supple and smooth, considering it is set up to be driven fairly hard, though certainly not to track standards of firm suspension. Obviously, the moment you let loose at all with your right foot on any kind of bend, you've got to be constantly aware that those rear wheels can happily slip away at any moment. That said, it's eminently controllable with those rear wheels, and if you lift at the right moment, you can soon gather it all up and carry it through to the next corner. At least that's what it said in the book.
And the price of this much-awaited newcomer, £40,000, which makes it very much Boxster made, as many people have been happy to point out. But come on, it immediately makes a Porsche Boxster look like an MX-5.
Right, well, to my mind, this is as good a moment as any to, metaphorically, roll over, lie back, light up a cigarette, secretly let one loose under the duvet, and think about stuff. Ooh, slinky, no top. Excellent, the whole lot goes away in the boot, which is, by the way, massive, as TVR seem to be determined to do. I suppose it means you can go away for that proper long weekend in your little sports car. This also gives us a good chance to see the wildest interior you're likely to come across anywhere, ever. This thing is nuts, but great for it. TVR have decided, right, throw away using anybody's anything else. They're going to make everything by hand, individually. Boy, have they. There was a lot of aluminium seen in the Cerberus, but now they've added to that brass, which gives us these beautiful brassy bits, which makes it look like nothing else you'll ever see. For £40,000, which is what you're spending, that's an awful lot of bespoke kit. We've got these superb vents scattered around the place, and you can't help but see this incredible binnacle. Again, with the Cerberus, they did something a bit unusual there. Well, they've gone right up the top here. It's superb. An enormous brass-faced speedo here, which doesn't sweep like you'd expect. It ticks in 2-mile-an-hour increments, so it goes around like a clock, which makes the whole thing seem somehow more important. We've got these warning lights to tell you when to change gear here, which keeps everything going nicely, though there is a rev limiter to make sure you don't damage anything. We have this central LCD readout, which can tell you pretty much anything you want, but most people opt to leave it set to a rev counter so you know what's happening. And even the tiny little gauges here for the temperature of the water and for how much fuel you've got left. They could have been fairly ordinary in there, but they're not, because instead of having a needle, they have a little metal, a little aluminium shutter that sweeps across. It is like nothing else you'll ever see. And the seats, very nice, very, very nice. Just because it looks, well, more than a little bit different, doesn't mean that the Tuscan has to be some temperamental hideaway in your garage and used twice a year type of thing. TVR reckon that actually it's their most usable creation to date, and they're probably not far wrong. Think about it, it is a proper coupe with the hardtop on, which offers you plenty of weather protection, which makes it a little more usable for a start. The boot is enormous if you want to go on holiday or just go to the shops in style. It's perfectly possible.
It is easy to forget with that limitless grip that you do have to be a little thoughtful about the input from your right foot, because you can very, very quickly shake it loose.
All of which is great, because being sensible and practical can make you and me feel good about ourselves as responsible adults. Who cares? Yes!
40,000 quid is a lot of wedge by any score, but it doesn't ordinarily buy you access into that elite supercar club. Well, it does now with the TVR Tuscan, because it delivers exactly what it says on the packet: supercar performance for roadster money. The only difference is you can go to the shops in it. Not that I'm going to.
Vauxhall and General Motors have probably never had it so good, because in the past 5 years their flagship Amiga has been consistently at the top of the executive car charts. In that time they've beaten off the likes of the Ford Scorpio and the Rover 800. They've literally beaten those two cars into submission. The quirky frog-eyed Scorpio we never really took to, and the Rover 800, after all, was just a Rover. So Vauxhall have taken the decision to freshen the Amiga range up, give it a new lease of life for the next 3 to 4 years before their next generation executive saloons and estates arrive. The most obvious are its exterior looks, with a new bonnet and boot, new front and rear lights, colour-keyed bumpers and sills, and new ranges of alloy wheels, plus a new 2.2-litre four-cylinder engine. Now, moving inside, again, it's an all-new interior. Vauxhall have tried to create, well, a touch of luxury, and I think they've pretty much succeeded. The dashboard has a soft-touch feel to it. There's a new centre console with heating and ventilation controls, and a brand new stereo system too. Now, Vauxhall, like most manufacturers, are incorporating a satellite navigation system into the car, and you can have the option of a 5-inch television monitor screen right there, giving you the sat-nav. There's plenty of space for passengers and some handy storage bins too. It has to be said that the Amiga was always a decent car to drive. Rear-wheel drive, a decent chassis and setup, and if you pick the 3-litre V6, well, a real stormer of an engine. 211 brake horsepower on tap, and very respectable 0 to 60 times of just over 8 seconds, top speed of 150 miles an hour. The 3-litre V6, of course, continues into the new range in either Elite or MV6 form. This is the MV6, and this, in my opinion, is the pick of the bunch. It gets a lowered sport suspension by 15mm, stiffer ride, a touch anyway, and unique alloy wheels and an aluminium dashboard. The base 2-litre engines don't really offer much get up and go when pulling such a big car with only 136 brake horsepower. The 2.2-litre engine already seen in the Sintra produces 144 brake horsepower, and the 2.5 V6 gets 170. If you must have diesel, well, you can have the 2.5-litre inline 6 with 130 brake horsepower. But stand by, because next year a flagship Amiga will be available with an aluminium 300 brake horsepower V8 engine, the same as we've seen in the Corvette. Now, although Vauxhall make great play of competing with the main German manufacturers like Mercedes, BMW and Audi, in reality, the user-chooser company car driver who has perhaps £25,000 to £30,000 to spend on their next car, well, I'm afraid they're going to choose an E-Class or an A6 or a 5 Series over the Amiga, no matter how good this car is. The company car driver who doesn't have a choice, well, this is no bad car to have in their driveway, but perhaps the main rivals for the new Amiga are the Saab 9.5, the Volvo S80 or the new Rover 75. So the Amiga Not Before Time has had a very welcome facelift, and that's really all that's happened with the car. The underpinnings remain the same as the outgoing Amiga model. It's very spacious, it's extremely well built. It's a car that can take on the might of Mercedes, BMW and Audi. It's just a shame it's got the wrong badge on it.
There are some things in life that are just downright annoying. People that turn up late, burnt toast, running out of toilet paper, and the fact that the Honda S2000 is a listless lump of metal until you hit 7,000 RPM. You see, at law-abiding speeds, the Honda's engine feels motorcycle. Below 7,000 RPM, it actually feels, well, not unlike an MX-5. Those thrills that it promises really don't materialise. And while the engine does sound fantastic, it seems a pity that Honda's engineers haven't paid closer attention to the chassis and the steering. You can't put a finger on any particular fault. It's just that the whole dynamic performance leaves you a little wanting and wondering exactly what could have been. The first thing you notice about the interior is this Formula One style instrument panel that goes up to 9,000 revs. Apart from that, it's really a very Spartan affair in here. But that's okay, because it means nothing gets in the way of the driving, which is what this car is all about. These snazzy red seats hold you in nice and tight, and there's a good deep seating position that makes you feel as if you're in a cockpit. That's enhanced by the high sides to the doors, the steering wheel, and this lovely little button that helps you start the engine. The hood is triggered by the flick of a button, and 6 seconds is all it takes to raise or drop. Perfect for our British summertime. The S2000 was born out of the SSM concept that was unveiled at the '95 Tokyo Motor Show, and it's truly stunning with its long bonnet and sharp line styling, a fitting birthday present from Honda to itself.
Coming up after the break, Chris Goffey puts the Skoda Octavia against the Volkswagen Bora, and Elisa Portelli puts the Seat Toledo through its paces.
In the past, Seat had, well, they had some cars, but that was it. Absolutely nothing to write home about, apart from bad build quality. But over the past few years, we have seen a major change in what was once a small brand. These days, Seat have no problem in trying something different, and with launching this, the new Toledo, into a market with rival cars such as BMW and Alfa Romeo, you could say that they've been rather daring. In fact, very daring indeed. Seat see themselves as the sporty ones of the VW family. They've taken a look at Alfa Romeo and said, we can do that, we can have Spanish flair, we too can make sexy cars, and for a lot less money. You can tell right away that the interior has come straight from the Volkswagen workshop. It's laid out and put together very well. However, the dials are a little bit fussy, but you'll soon forgive it. Now, things that come as standard, well, there is a list as long as your arm, and no presenter can remember them, so I've got myself a list. So these are a few that come as standard on the V5. We've got colour-coded bumpers, tinted glass, 16-inch alloy wheels, front electric windows, rear electric windows, CD auto changer in the glove box. We've got a rear anti-sun curtain, pollen filter, driver's airbag, passenger airbag, side airbag. Control, remote opening of petrol flat, that's a good one. Boot light, cruise control. We've got height and depth adjustable steering wheel. On the road, you may not think this has the same presence as the Alfa 156, but it does turn heads and it's a superb drive. This is the 2.3 V5, and what a fantastic torquey engine it is. It'll get you from 0 to 62 miles an hour in just over 9 seconds. Let this baby loose on a nice windy road and you'll feel like you're reliving your youth in that little hot hatch that you never had. is a car that wants to be driven. You can push it hard in every gear and hear the growl of the V5 engine. The suspension is firm and sporty, which makes for excellent handling. All of Seat's cars have been through a complete change thanks to a good partnership with VW. The Ibiza is hotter than it's ever been, and their latest edition, the Leon, has a four-wheel drive system on top of the range models. So it looks like they stand a good chance of outgrowing their owners. At just under 20 grand, this really is great value for money. And one thing's for certain, the Toledo driver will walk away with a smile that's as wide as the badge on the front grille.
It's a simple idea. Design yourself a common floor pan and then base lots of different models on that floor pan, and you save yourself loads of money. Well, that's what the Volkswagen Group have done. They developed a chassis and powertrain which is underneath the new Golf, the Audi A3, the new Volkswagen Bora, and the Skoda Octavia. But just how different in character and performance and appeal can two cars be when they share the same underpinnings? Let's find out. Our protagonists in this lineup are the top of the Bora range, the V5, a smooth 150 brake horsepower executive express, and what Skoda call the top of their range, the Octavia, but fitted with the 1.8 litre turbocharged petrol engine. It's an interesting comparison because both engines develop the same maximum power, 150 brake horsepower in both cases, but it's the way the engines deliver that performance that makes them rather different. As a car manufacturer, it's very difficult to shed an image once it's become established in the buyer's minds. Now take this car. I turned up the other day and somebody said, "What are you driving?" I said, "I'm driving a Skoda Octavia." And they smiled at me. Why did they smile? They remembered those dreadful old just a carrot jokes, because Skoda very definitely is no joke anymore. It's built by the Volkswagen Group to the same standards as Audi and other Volkswagen cars. You don't normally associate Skoda with the image of sportiness, but with this 1.8 turbo engine. Well, it's definitely all of that. When the turbo comes in, the car really flies. It's like a Volkswagen Golf GTI in feel, and it delivers the power in a very different way to the Bora. The V5 develops exactly the same 150 brake horsepower, but it's a much smoother unit. It gets the feeling of the iron fist in the velvet glove, whereas this is out and out, rorty-torty, wheel-spinning performance. As you'd expect for a car based on the Golf platform, if it wasn't for the Skoda badge in the centre of the steering wheel here, well, you'd be hard-pressed to tell which car in the range you were driving. Certainly, it feels no different to the Bora on the road. Perhaps a little bit more road noise. That might be a function of the hatchback body, and there's a little bit more boom, and certainly more road noise transmitted from the rear wheels than you find in the Bora or in the Audi. Again, they're more expensive cars, so perhaps they've got a bit more sound deadening material in the shell. It's fascinating to see how two design teams tackle the job of engineering the body shells of these two cars. Volkswagen engineers took rather a different line at the top of the doors. Skoda have come down, you'll see, and Skoda has gone for a much more steeply sloping rear window and a hatchback. Gives you a huge space inside the boot, but Bora has similar dimensions but a very narrow boot lid, so it's actually quite difficult to get into. I think of the two, I prefer the hatchback. This is the top of the range car, and it comes with these rather good alloy wheels and leather upholstery as standard. £17,299. not cheap, but perhaps more effective is the bottom of the range entry-level model, which is just $11,299, and you get most of this. So how does Volkswagen tackle the same chassis? Lighter and airier in the Bora, thanks to the choice of light-coloured materials on door trims and carpets and headlining. But that's obviously a matter of specification, of choosing the colours you want inside the car. Nice little touches like the fake wood trim on the doors, on the fascia and the gear knob add to the image of an Executive Express. Ride and handling feel very much the same. If anything, the Bora feels slightly softer. I don't know if they've got softer spring rates in here than they have in the Skoda, but slightly more float to the car than the Octavia. A feature of the common platform is that both cars have literally enormous boots. As we've mentioned, different ways of accessing them. But given the choice, I would prefer slightly smaller boots in both cars and a bit more rear legroom, because that's what's missing. There's really not a lot to choose between the two cars, and that's a compliment to Skoda, evinced by their huge success in the European and UK market since the Volkswagen takeover. Volkswagen dealers tell us that the Bora isn't exactly setting the world on fire from a sales point of view, and no big surprise there either, because its predecessors, the Jetta and the Vento, were always sold far less than the hatchback Golf. Really, the choice between the two comes down to which engines do you want, which interior trim, and what extras you're going to specify. But whichever way you build your car, the Skoda's going to save you at least £1,000, if not a lot more. And that's the most compelling argument of all.
Next week on Motor Week, Richard Hammond travels to Versailles to try out the all-new Ford Galaxy. Ginny Buckley tests the new 1.3 Toyota Yaris, and Ken Gibson puts the new MR2 through its paces.